Hey everybody, welcome back. Freedom Powered is back in action today. And so for today's episode, we're going to hit on freedom of thought. We haven't really hit on that very much in previous episodes. So we're going to talk about how you can have different ideas and how your ideas can change the world. And that's basically somewhat what we mean by freedom of thought. But before we start the show, I feel like we don't talk about our personal lives as much, and I feel like you guys don't have that personal connection with us sometimes. So first off, I'm going to start off by asking Mason a question about him personally, and then we'll see what we get. Mason doesn't know. I'm going to ask him though. Mason, if you could be any animal, why?
If I could be any animal, that's a tricky question, and it takes a lot of thought. And one of the principles of thought is to not pick your knee-jerk reaction, because the knee-jerk reaction is I'd want to just be, like a Beverly Hills dog. But are you really free? You might be living a posh life, but I don't think so. I think what I'd really want to be is, I don't know. I might want to be like a blue whale, because those things, they live forever. They're out there in the ocean. They're really just chilling, and they don't even have to put that much energy into what they do. They just float around and eat a bunch of food that they don't even have to hunt. It just flows into their mouth when they open their mouth. That seems pretty chill to me.
All right, so you're saying you want to be a big, lazy water animal instead of right now you're a big, lazy land animal.
Yeah, but then I would be the biggest mammal of all. What about you?
All right. Oh, I for sure monkey. Monkeys are cool. They could grab stuff with their feet.
You would be that. You would be that banana monkey. Have you seen that YouTube video where they feed the monkey bananas, and it'll like break it on its chest and like eat a third of the banana, and the rest just flies into the air? That'd be you.
I haven't seen that, but I have to look it up.
All right.
But yeah, so today's episode isn't about animals, sorry. But it's about how your ideas can change the world, even if the world view at the time or at the moment is opposed to your ideas.
Yeah. Let's start off with a quote. Do you guys know who says this? A man who won't die for something is not fit to live. It's kind of a deep quote. Who do you think said it?
I'm going to take a wild guess, and just because I know this, I'll be right. Martin Luther King Jr.
You're right. You are right. And that's a pretty deep quote when you think about it. If you don't have something you're willing to die for, what are you doing to live? And I know a lot of people will say, hey, I'm willing to die for my family, which is probably true. And that gives you something to live for. And I think that a lot of people rely on their family, and it's a good thing. It's a very good thing. That's why family's the most important thing. That's why everyone loves to have a family. But what amazes me, and what really catches my attention and really gets my respect, is when I see someone who finds something that isn't family that they're willing to die for. And that's just, it really resonates with me, because it means like they really found their passion. Because everyone, when you have a family, you're going to be committed to the fullest. Family comes first. But when you see someone who has something else, then it's like you really found what it is that you want to do. You found your passion. You found something that you're willing to die for. And I think MLK did that.
Yeah, and for today's episode, we'll go even farther back than that. Like Harriet Tubman. She literally risked her life for something she believed in. And it wasn't just for herself. She did it for others too. She was born as a slave, and she escaped her slave owner at the age of 29. But she could have stopped there and lived free, but she decided she was going to go back and save hundreds of lives afterwards.
Right. I mean, so she personally went on 17 missions back to Maryland from Pennsylvania, which is where a lot of the Underground Railroad ended up, because that was a free state. But she went on 17 missions back to Maryland, which is where she was born. She personally freed over 300 slaves, and like that is astronomical number when you're thinking about one individual taking people mostly by the cover of night, I would imagine, and avoiding capture. That's some straight Navy SEAL shit right there. That's crazy. And she did it though. She did it. And when you look at her life, she it wasn't like she was well trained for this. She, at a very young age, she had a really bad head injury that was caused by one of the slave owners, and it was despicable. But at the same time, that head injury, she had epilepsy from it. She had severe head pains, and she would have visions. And I mean, a quick caveat is that she claimed that some of those visions that she had were from God, and that's kind of what inspired her to go and devote her life to the Underground Railroad. But just thinking about that she was seeing things, she was in severe pain, epilepsy, and she still was able to go and run a top-notch operation to save people from an entire country, an entire government that was out to hunt her down. That takes some dedication. And not only does it take dedication, it takes risk, because it doesn't matter how good she was at the job. It doesn't matter how much she knew the Underground Railroad. There still is going to be a factor of risk there, because it's just straight life threatening. And she did it, and it was amazing. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Underground Railroad, though, for those of us that don't know, Nick?
So the Underground Railroad it's an awesome thing that was invented by not just freed slaves or slaves who escaped from their owners, but it was also white people. And it was, the crazy thing for me is that it was such like a minority amount of people who believe that slaves should be free, but that minority had such a big impact. And so the Underground Railroad was freed blacks and then whites as well. And just, we've talked about this before, getting a group of people, like an organization, who believe in a purpose, and how you can do a lot of the good if you're in a group and you all are fighting for the same cause.
Right. In a country at the time where there was it's not even divisive, it was straight violent, the separation between races, and this institution, the Underground Railroad, it transcended color, and it even transcended culture, because there was a lot of people, whether it was white or whatever color you were, there's a lot of people that lived in free states who believed that slavery was wrong, but at the same time, they were not willing to do anything about it. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's just the fact of human nature. As people will have their opinions, people will believe in certain things, but to be able to take action on it, that's another level. And to find an underground institution like the railroad, to where they had people going out there and risking their lives every day to fight for something that they believed in, and not even what they believed in, but what is the right thing, and to go against so many people at the time that violently opposed them, is kind of amazing. And it's interesting, because just if you think about it, it really doesn't take a whole lot of people to institute change. You know what I mean? People think that you need to have this massive movement. You need the majority of people to get behind you, but that's not the case. You just need a fraction of people to believe and start taking action, to where you can make change. I mean, it's not a majority, it's just a minority. That's all it really takes. And they really did that. And when you look at what she did, she knew the role that she had to play. She really played her part. And she was a conductor specifically, because she provided safe haven for the people that she was saving. But think about the kind of other roles that people were playing. And this is where we can tie it back to like kind of a freedom empowered principle here, is that you need people from all different backgrounds. You need to, look at the positives that everyone brings to the table. And that's what she did. She was a conductor. She grew up in Maryland. She knew the terrain. She knew, the the interworkings of the Underground Railroad. But that's not enough. She didn't have money. She didn't have property. She was at the time a fugitive, so she wouldn't be able to just hide people in broad daylight. She needed other people to get behind her cause. And so, you have to give credit to even the people who played even the smallest part, even the people who just gave their house up, as like a safe house. You have to give credit to those people too. You have to give credit to all the people that risked it all for this movement.
Yeah, and they were all committing felonies at the time. And that goes back to the quote we said in the beginning. If a man who won't die for something is not fit to live, they found a purpose worth dying on, practically, worth fighting for. And that's how they were able to succeed. Just the small group of people who were willing to fight for this cause were enough to change history.
Right, and it's crazy how people can change history as a whole. We look back on some of the amazing things that have happened, but there's really just a small amount of people in this world that have made the biggest change. You know what I mean? You look back at Gandhi, MLK, Harriet Tubman. You look at people like Abraham Lincoln. You look at just these people that have made the most change, but individuals. So for you to sit out there and you to think that, hey, I can't make massive change because I'm just one person, no, that's just an excuse, because all it takes is one person. All it takes is, that individual to see something that they want to have changed and to go out there and make it happen. And Harriet Tubman is a legend in her own right, and she always will be, the same way that MLK is, the same way that all of these great people are. And, to even drive the point home even more, when you take it down to a more human level, try to relate it to people's everyday lives, she was married as a slave. She was married, and her husband, after she escaped to Pennsylvania, she came back to save the rest of her family. And her husband, John, he had taken a new life, and he refused to leave with her. He was afraid to go and escape, which isn't bad, because when you look at the climate that it was, the life that they were in, it was life-threatening to go out there and try to escape. But at the same time, she saw, that she had a bigger purpose. She could have stayed, with her husband and, lived a horribly oppressive life, but she decided to say, hey, I'd rather die a free person on my feet than die a slave on my knees, and then live a life, as a slave. And she went out there, and it's interesting, because you need to possibly let people that are closest to you go. You know what I mean, Nick? Like, you have to. Some of the people that are closest to you that you depend on might not be the people that actually are there for you in the end.
Yeah, well, it just depends on how they support your way of life, practically, like your goal, if they're supporting your passion. And I'm not saying everyone has to make huge sacrifices like Harriet Tubman did, but just to have even just 50% of that dedication to your cause, or for your dream or your goal, whatever your passion is and you're going for it, just even 50% of that, you can achieve massive success in what you want to do. That's what I find wild, that she was able to take that risk, or like that sacrifice, to go for it.
Even when her closest family said, no, it's not worth the risk. She took a stance, and she was able to not let the people that she held most dear convince her out of doing something that was bigger. And, one of the things that you have to really appreciate is that she used the experiences that she had and the knowledge she had to her advantage. And we talk about that a lot. And when we talk about it, it's way different. And that's why we talk about these extreme situations every now and again, is to kind of, I don't want to say motivate, because we're not a motivational podcast, but to, invite you to take action, because if she could take action, then you could take action. And, she was, she could have lived a safe life in Pennsylvania with her family that she brought back there, and she could have lived out the rest of her days a free woman, and everything would have been fine. But she realized that she had a skill and, a passion that kind of transcended her life, and that's why she went out there and she decided to risk it all. No one would have blamed her if she would have just stayed in Pennsylvania and lived out her days, but she didn't. She realized that she had a chance to change the world, and that's what makes her a legend. It's her devotion to help all of humankind. There's nothing wrong with just pursuing your self-interest, but what if you can do something greater?
Yeah, and another crazy thing is like she was risking it all for humankind, and there was even a bounty on her head at one point, and that didn't even stop her. It was a $40,000 bounty, and back in those times, that's like $1 million. That's a lot of money. That's more money than a lot of people will see in their life. Just because her pursuing her dream was such a disruption, and she was helping so many lives. And it was a lifestyle for her, and it wasn't just an action. Her taking action became her lifestyle of freeing slaves, and that's how she changed the world. And it really shows how she was really the beginning in making generational changes as well. And we'll talk about it later this episode, but how she influenced others to do the same, how to make people more free.
I mean, I just, you have to make these connections back to Freedom Empowered and like the overall principles that we have. And we talk about going out there and taking action. So some of you might think, well, I'm going to just, I can get behind taking the action. I can get behind, pulling the trigger on, pursuing my goals. But that's not what we mean. By taking action means pursuing a lifestyle of action. It means every day you're striving to learn more. You're striving to be better. You're striving to do more. And that's what she did. And because if you look at what she did afterwards, even after, when the Civil War kicked off, she actually assisted the Union Army in creating like a spy network throughout the South. And she also advised military officers on the Union side about, the way the South was laid out, the way Maryland was laid out. And, that's different than even what her original cause was. And then you even go after that, after the Emancipation Proclamation, after the Civil War was over, she did even more. Her mission was to help people that were at a disadvantage. She went and she created schools that taught people to read and write. And she couldn't even read and write herself. That was in the past. She really had no opportunity to learn. But she realized that it was something that could benefit other people. So she created schools. And then even later, back when Susan B. Anthony was pursuing the women's right movement and she was trying to gain the right to vote for women around the nation, she went there and she supported her as well. There was no end. That is the biggest point that I think I can talk about here, and really is one of the biggest principles on this show, is that there's no end. There's no goal. That you've never done enough. If you want to be massively successful, you have to see it as a lifestyle. You have to see it as a mission to keep pushing forward. You can't say, oh, well, I made myself $1 million. I'm done. You know what I mean? Or like, I've made some sort of change and I'm done. You can, but why would you? Especially if you've been successful in, helping somebody, or you've been successful in achieving something. Why would you not pursue that even farther? Why would you not help even more people? And that's really the mentality you have to have. Is it's not just I'm fighting my ass off to achieve this one goal or to take action on this one thing. It's I'm going to continue to take action and continue to pursue my goals until I've really set out to achieve what I've wanted to achieve. And that's what she did. And It's just pretty amazing.
Yeah, and if you look at it in like modern day life, if you look at the most successful people today, most of them didn't stop at, oh, I made $500,000. They didn't stop there. They kept pursuing. Like you look at Elon Musk. We talked about it in one of our early episodes. He could have stopped at after selling PayPal. Nope. He decided that wasn't enough. He kept taking the risk and the changes, and now he's at where he's at. He's a billionaire now.
There was a time when Elon Musk had already made $20 million. And he was living on a friend's couch because he had invested every last cent that he had towards his next venture, towards SpaceX and towards Tesla. He could have, we've talked about it in one of our very original episodes about him, but in the beginning, his goal was to own a McLaren. And then, what if he had stopped then? What if? I don't know, because I'm not a legend. I'm not somebody who has changed the world. But if you look at someone like Elon Musk, what if he had stopped? What if he had said, I made my $20 million, I'm going to buy my McLaren and live out the rest of my days on some tropical island? But he didn't. He didn't. He kept pushing, and he went so far as to almost put himself into abject poverty just to, pursue that next level of his vision. And it's about being on a war path. It's not just a goal. You're on a mission. You're on a life mission to pursue your passion. And that's the thing, is when it's your passion, it's not something that's brutal. People mostly think about hard work as it's like something that, no one wants to work hard. You have to work hard for a short amount of time to, achieve something. No. If you actually find your passion and you actually pursue your passion with all of your energy, it's not going to be shitty. It's not going to be, dissatisfying, because it's going to be something that you want.
Yeah, and that reminds me of something Tim Kennedy said. He said that the less developed you are, the bigger gains you see. And like Mason was saying, people who embody their vision and are pursuing it, they start to grow. And if that's your life mission, you start to learn, you start to adapt, and you're constantly getting better. And just because Harriet Tubman started as a slave, and she was able to grow, able to teach people when she could barely read and write. She grew as a person, and she changed the world as we know it.
And if you want to hear something that's really scary, you want to hear it's really big picture, it's if you want to change the world. And there's some of you out there that do. I mean, this show is for all spectrums of people. It's because, as we know, this show is, it's not even the show, it's the principles of freedom. It's to pursue whatever it is. It's your own definition of freedom, your own definition of success. So whatever it is, pursue it. But there's some of you out there that have this vision of changing the world. And if that's the case, there's some really hard truths you might have to accept. Is the fact that you might not change the world in your lifetime. Changing the world doesn't always happen in one generation. It might transcend generations. And how do you prepare yourself for that? What do you do to stay motivated when you might never see your fruits of your labor? And we just talked about it. It's when you have a passion, it's not about the result. It's not about the end state. It's about you seeing, a potential vision that you want and then just pursuing it. And when you look at it, Harriet Tubman's the perfect example, because she did have many accomplishments. She did accomplish a lot of things, but we all know history. There were still massive injustices that continued even after, the Emancipation Proclamation. There's massive injustices that continued all the way through up until, the mid-90s. And then you see
for another century after.
And then you go and you see somebody like MLK, and Harriet Tubman definitely set the stage for him. She did. Without Harriet Tubman, there would not be any MLK, and without MLK, there would not be people that there are today. You have to think bigger than yourself, and that's what really happened here. And if you look into MLK and you start to see what the king says, he learned from people like Harriet Tubman. One of his biggest inspirations was Gandhi. And it really shows how skills, ambition really transcends continents, it transcends cultures, and it really transcends individuals. And you can see how he applied some of those tactics that Gandhi used into his own movement during the civil rights movement. And one thing that's really interesting is that MLK needed that group of people to be around him. He couldn't have done it alone. He needed the people that he had alongside him.
Yeah, and he never gave up, no matter how hard it got for him. Even when people were trying to kill him, he still didn't give up. He eventually gave up his life for this cause. And he was a smart guy. He realized that something needed to change for his kids, his grandkids, for all of the black people back in that time. Something needed to change for all of them. So that was his life goal. That was his passion, and he pursued that every chance he got, no matter what was the cost.
And I have another quote for you. It's, faith is taking the first step even when you can't see the whole staircase. Who do you think said that?
I'm going to take a wild guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Martin Luther King Jr.
It's possible, and you might be right. You might be right, because it was him that said that. And it really brings about, another point is you're not always going to see the end. You're not always going to know where you're going to end up. It's the Freedom 22, as we said. If MLK refused to act simply because he didn't see the end goal, where would we be? He chose to act because he saw something that he believed in, and he pursued it, and at the end it ended up working out. He ended up achieving massive things, but that was not his goal. His goal was not, he wanted to see massive change, but it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to work 5 years and then I'm going to achieve this, the end. No, it was, I'm going to dedicate my life to something and I'm going to pursue it, and I'm going to start to just cut away at, the evil that was in the world.
Yeah, and he eventually went on to win a Nobel Peace Prize. And he helped get the Equal Rights Act passed. So his goal that he was chasing was almost completed. He did so much in his lifetime, and I think I don't know how old he was, but I think he was only 39, 40 when he died. So the amount he accomplished in just 40-ish years is just insane to think about. And that's just because he had the freedom of thought. He had the idea that legal segregation wasn't okay. It wasn't enough. Everyone should be equal.
It's true. I know he had another quote that he said. He talked about Nazi Germany. He said that, back in the day, back during Nazi Germany, being a Nazi was legal. Hitler didn't do anything illegal. He did things that were straight evil, that were straight despised amongst the world. But in Germany at the time, that was not illegal. So you have to think that someone has to have the freedom of thought. Someone has to, you can't always just rely on your institutions. You can't always just rely on your government. You can't rely on the society around you to paint this picture of, what is the right way to think, what's the right way to behave. Sometimes you have to oppose everyone around you. And that's what he really did. And then to go even further than that, he has another quote. He said, "Let no man pull you so low as to hate him." And that's really the reason why MLK was able to change the world, was because he was not violent. He was not militant. He didn't say, "I'm going to fight fire with fire," because that wouldn't have worked. He needed to go and show the country that he stood for something bigger, that he was there to, not say, "I'm going to go and cause violence amongst my oppressors," because that would have just created more enemies potentially. But he sat down and he didn't use his gut reaction, because if I was MLK, if I was from back then, I probably would have been like, "Hey, let's just go and start killing people. Let's go and be violent. But he sat down. He set aside that knee-jerk reaction. He thought about, what do I have to do to actually, create change? And one of them is not hating your enemy. Because, let's be honest, the best revenge is success. The best revenge that you can have against your haters is to be successful and have them look at you and be jealous of the person that you've become. And that applies across the board. It's more than just during the civil rights movement. You can apply that to every day. Don't go out there and go into your life and hate on people that are hating on you. Don't go out there and try to hold some grudge or try to get back at somebody that is doing you wrongly. Go out there and be successful. Go out there and achieve your dreams, and then they're going to look at you and they're going to be jealous, and that is the best revenge that you can have. Just don't waste your energies on things that don't matter, because hating your enemy isn't going to help you get better. It's not going to help you move closer to your success. It's not.
Yeah, and there's a book I recommend for you guys. It's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F Word. And
come on. It's a book. Then it's A Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And it's a very serious book. And it has, what it does is it brings out some of these principles in a very lighthearted manner, but it's what people need. People need to be entertained. That's how you gain a following. You look at some of the most prominent people out there that are pushing change, and they're entertaining. You have to entertain people. We've talked about this on our past episode. We talked about this when we talked about Nat Geo. You can't change the world if you just force ideas down people's throats. You have to find a common ground. You have to find a connection. And in today's world, one of the biggest connections is to be entertaining. And that's what this book does, is it brings it in a lighthearted fashion. And one of their main principles is that you're only going to ever be able to truly give a fuck about 3 things in your life, about a few things. You can't go out there. I mean, what you're going to do is you're going to go out there and you're going to care. You can take pride in your actions. You can go out there and care about certain things that you do, and not you don't have to blow off things that are in your life, but at the same time you could only truly give that fuck about a few things. And that's kind of the point here, is if you waste your energy, getting back at the people that, that are haters in your life, or trying to go and prove a point to people, you're wasting your energy. Don't do that. Just focus on the things that matter. Focus on the things that can make you better. And that's the point of the book, and you guys should all give it a read. I mean, once again, we should be getting sponsored by these people, but no, because we're here to spread the knowledge. We're here to give you the freedom of thought, and reading is a very important part of that freedom of thought, because you can get an entire lifetime worth of knowledge, of experience, in a matter of hours just by reading.
Yeah, and MLK was a big reader himself. He was a very smart guy, as we mentioned earlier, and he really left a legacy in this nation. Hey, he's a legend, as what we like to call on this show. He's one of the legends. He falls under that list for us. But the freedom freaks, the freedom empowered. You guys are the freedom freaks, you listeners.
They don't even know that. We might change the name, but for now,
I like calling them freaks.
It's true. I mean, in the environment that we live in today, living a truly free life is not normal. It's not something that, even though we live in a free country, so you have the opportunity to be free, but there's still so many people that choose to not live a free life. They choose to not pursue their own self-interest and to go out there and do what they really want. So just because we live in a free country doesn't mean that you're free. So I think Freedom Freaks might actually be a fitting name, because it's the people that are willing to go out there and, be different.
I think some people may say living a truly free life is kind of freaky. Wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah, totally. That's a great joke, Nick.
Hey, I tried my hardest.
Nick doesn't write the humor for this show. But He has his
But
purpose.
but all you guys can see that how our goals may be different from MLK, Harriet Tubman, and even your guys' goals may be different from ours. Everyone has different goals. But something that we can take from each other is that putting in the hard work for your passion and taking the risk like these guys did can help accomplish your goals, can help change the world even.
Right. It's to find something in your life that you are passionate about, that you're willing to hang your hat on. And there's everyone we talk about on this show, every single person, they ended up at a different place. They achieved something that was different, that was unique to them. But when you really focus in, and that's exactly the entire purpose of this show, is to go and take these people that have vastly different goals, vastly different accomplishments. But when you really break them down as human beings, as people, you start to realize that they all are using the same process to go out there and be successful. They have the same mindset, they have the same personality, they have the same work ethic. And that is the point that we're trying to drive in here, is that you can pick whichever path you want to be on. If you want to be an innovator, you can go and follow people like Tesla, people like Elon Musk, people like Jeff Bezos. But if you want to change the world, you go out there and you follow people like MLK, you follow people like Nat Geo. You can take whichever path you want, but at the end of the day, it all starts at the same place. It all starts at the same mentality, the same principles. The principles that we pursue here, the principles of freedom, the principles of building a life that you want to live, that it's work ethic, it's taking massive risk, it's not listening to your haters, it's following and really understanding where you want to be based on the 4 principles of freedom that we have on the show, and then learning from the people around you to see how you're going to get there.
Yeah, and it's really about elevating your perspective. Another thing we like to say. I don't know, we find things we like to say, we'll say it a lot. But elevating your perspective, think about a way how you can achieve your personal success in a different way. A lot of people get their heads stuck in a gutter and they think, "Oh, how can I screw someone over and get their money?" When you could look at it in a way where, how can I provide a product or service or a cause that will benefit people, and I also benefit from it as well.
That's one of the greatest things about this nation, in and of itself, is that when you do find your passion, one of the best ways to go out there and make a life for yourself and to be successful is to help other people at the same time. If you go out there and try to just scam people, it's not going to work. But if you can go and actually provide them with meaning, actually help them, actually give them something better, and you make a little bit of money off it, is that you being selfish, or is that you finding a way to pursue your self-interest but also help other people? That's kind of the point of freedom of thought. Freedom of thought is the beginning to all endeavors, and we haven't talked about it a lot, and it's unfortunate. We need to talk about it more, but that's the first step, is to think like an individual, think like, have your own mindset, have your own views, have your own passions, because if you just try to fall in line with everyone else, what are you going to do that's different? You have to go out there and just have your own view.
Exactly. If you find your passion, pursue it even if you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And you'll be surprised. By the end, when you realize how much you've accomplished, you'll be happier than you've ever been in your life, because you followed your passion.
Exactly. And, as always, we will have an abrupt conclusion. We can have a problem with that, but that's all we have for you guys today. I hope that today you learned a little bit something more about yourself. Hopefully it can get you thinking in a different pattern than what you're used to. Don't just think about where you want to end up, but think about how you can change yourself now. And yeah, I mean, Nick, do you have anything else for our viewers?
Well, just a simple check out our Facebook page, leave a rating and review on iTunes, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Let freedom ring.